Okay, let's go ahead and get started. All right, thank you for joining me. I'm Justin Shaw of Stone Fabricator Elite, and in today's webinar, I'm going to be sharing with you how to build a sales engine to drive growth for your stone company. Now, quick note before we dive in, I should mention that the strategies and solutions that I'm going to share with you here today are 100% applicable if your shop is in a position where you've seen a decline in sales. So let's say you've had a 20% decline in sales in Q1. All of the same strategies and tactics that I'm going to share with you apply to offsetting that decline in sales, not only if you're focused on driving growth. So you'll still get equal value. All right, let's go ahead. So the presentation that I'm going to share with you is pulled from what I delivered on the Stone Fabricator stage at Coverings in Orlando, sponsored by ISFA and Rockheads Group. So you're the beneficiary of having, many people attend over 2 days, really, ask some great questions and tell us what they were really struggling with and focused on. And we were able to take that and build it into our presentation here. Okay, so what are the topics that we're going to cover? So we're going to go over some, so we align on what are some of the big challenges that shops are facing with market and economic conditions that are further amplifying those things. We'll get into, of course, what is a sales engine exactly, and how does it solve those challenges and constraints? Then if you're, if what I'm talking about is resonating, and it makes sense and you see that, okay, this is something that we should have foundationally for our business, so that we have predictability and control and we're not on the roller coaster of inconsistent revenue and sales or sales and revenue, then how do I actually go about building my engine? And how do I do that quickly? So we're going to talk about that. And then to wrap things up, because this will be pretty short, is what are our pro tips? So we have a turnkey program, our sales engine in 90 days program. So we've got it dialed in. So what are our pro tips for you that, there's a lot to think about, and how can we put you in the fast lane? So we'll give you some of our pro tips to help guide you as you go. And then at the end, we'll, if you've got any questions as we go along, please hold them at the end, or you can drop them in the chat and then we'll tackle them at the end. All right, so let me just move my camera out of the way. Quick introduction as to our background. My name again, Justin Shaw of Stone Fabricator Elite. And we've been working with stone companies, fabricators and suppliers since 2016. And we specialize in helping stone companies to leverage our proven strategies and solutions to grow their business more quickly and easily. One other note is that we do specialize in new business development on the B2B side, the business to business side of things. So helping our program members to activate meaningful and profitable relationships with design build pros, general contractors, millwork companies. Last year in 2022, we generated over 50 million in quote and bid opportunities, specifically B2B for our program members. So that's a little bit of our background, so that if you have any questions that come up for you, either with what we're presenting, on this topic, or at the end of the Q&A, if you've just got general questions about sales, marketing, also on the retail side, even though we don't focus on that, we have a lot of experience with that, so can answer questions on that as well. So sales, marketing, new business development, and ultimately growth for your shop. Please ask those questions because we'd love to dive in and provide some extra value at the end. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Find the right place to put this camera since we're recording those for those that were not able to attend. Okay, so let's talk about the struggle to grow or gain control of your sales. What are the main constraints faced by stone and surface fabricators? All right, so right now we've got a softening of the market. Now, depending on what region you're in, you might be seeing growth, where some of our program members are just organically growing because of what's going on in the market. But in many other places in the country, there's a softening, and so there's an overall lower volume of jobs, which makes it a lot harder to drive growth, or you're experiencing a decline. There's tighter margins with inflation, so harder to generate a profit. And labor market challenges, so hard to find for both, front of the house, admin, sales, HR, et cetera, or installers, people on the shop floor, skilled, labor, trouble in hiring quality, which also stifles growth. So these market and economic conditions hit shops hard when you're, especially hard if you've seen a decline in sales, but also if you're trying to grow. And they're further amplified by generally an inability to control the volume of leads. So if you want to grow, what's the first thing, that you need to be able to scale up on to be able to grow? And that generally comes down to opportunities. We need more leads to essentially have those convert into more bid opportunities and quotes to be able to, land more customers. So how do we gain control of that? And then, one of the things that amplifies those challenges that I just talked about is, again, a lack of control to offset declining sales. So if we see a drop in the market, or if we see our margins are being squeezed, so we're less profitable, or we just generally have less sales, we don't have the levers to pull in order to, ensure that in Q3 we don't have, we don't maintain or continue to see a 20% decline in sales, right? We can't offset that. So we're at the whims of economic and market conditions. And then last, one of the main things that sort of pours fuel on the fire is a leaky pipeline. So, not a proper system to organize our opportunities. So when the pool of opportunities is shrunk, what amplifies and makes that worse is that we leave money on the table. We're not getting as many of those deals across the finish line because we don't have the right systems or, platforms to help support us. So those are some fundamental things that we're going to look to address through the utilization of a sales engine. All right, so what is a sales engine? How does it solve some of those problems? And why is it the key to unlocking your ability to gain control? So a sales engine is actually a combination of system and processes used to first generate leads, like we talked about, qualify and nurture them at scale. Because if let's say you're looking to grow, if you're a $3 million shop and you want to get to 5, well, you're going to need more volume of leads, of opportunities. And so the systems and processes you might have used to be a $3 million shop isn't necessarily going to translate when you want to be a $5 million shop. So that's why we use the term, qualify and nurture them at scale, because you have to be able to, no matter how many come in, you need the systems and processes to ensure that you can continue to maintain that efficiency. And then generally you want to be leveraging a CRM and some form of automation to do a lot of the heavy lifting that allows you to do it at scale. So you're not relying on people, heavily to do that. And then in order to convert them into paying customers, that's the next part, right? So what, again, are our systems and processes to ensure that we convert these at a high of rate as possible, and so that we're consistent with that. And then ultimately, what happens after the sale? How do we get those people to become advocates of our brand? And we'll go into a little bit more about why that's so important and not to be overlooked. When so much energy is placed on the front end, then often after we win close a deal, it's on to the next, and we lose sight of, okay, how do we nurture our customers and show them a lot of gratitude and appreciation so that they can become loyal advocates of our brand? All right. Now, the key to being able to offset market and economic conditions or grow with predictability is control. That's the theme of our conversation today. And what that means is you need to be able to predictably control a certain outcome or the output from your engine of either sales, or it is sales ultimately, but also your return on investment. But if we break that down further, we'll get into that in a second. But what's the output? What's the sales and ROI from the input, which is either money, time, or effort, or a combination of those three. So an input might be we're going to spend money on Facebook ads, and the output of that is it's going to give us X number of leads, which results into this many quote opportunities, and then we close this amount. So that's how many customers we get as a result of input into that advertising channel of money and a little bit of time and effort, right? So that's just one example. But ultimately, when we talk about a sales engine, there are different levers that you want to be thinking about. And depending on the needs of the business, you can control that by increasing or decreasing your input to get the output that you want. All right, so to have this level of control of your sales, you need to have 4 parts of a high-performing sales engine. Let me just move this camera out of the way. Number 1, a lead generation mechanism. And the reason that we use the word mechanism is, again, comes down to control, right? You need to have the components of that dialed in so you can ultimately dial things up when you need to, dial it down. So for example, if there's seasonality in your business, different periods of time that are busier than others, you have control to dial it down as needed. And then again, bring it back up. And then as those leads come into your business, into your ecosystem, how are we nurturing those leads? So how do we organize them? How do we, differentiate our business from our competitors? How do we ensure we're following up timely and consistently so that ultimately we can impact our sales conversion? That's number 3. What are the things, the processes, the tools, and also skill development of your salespeople to ensure that we're consistently getting as many of those opportunities across the finish line as we need to get the outcome and result that we need. And then what happens after we win a sale? That's number 4. Post-sale, what's often called nurturing, or we like the term gratitude campaigns. What are we doing after we win a sale? And why is that important? All right, so let's go back over here, move this up to the top. So here are the keys to building your sales engine. I'm gonna go through the 3 steps to success for each part of your engine. All right, first, lead generation mechanism. What do I want you guys to think about with that? Well, number 1, where we often see shops struggle is if they don't have control. So predictably, we can get X number of leads in July, August, and September. We know more or less, with some margin on either side, how many leads we're going to get. If you don't have that in place at the moment where if we spend X, we will get Y, that predictability, then you need to focus on just one channel. If you do have that, okay, you could be doing Google ads, Facebook ads, etc. But often what will happen is if you don't have that dialed in, if you don't have control, then you're going to dilute your efforts. You're going to be spread too thin, and you're not going to have something on the front end to be able to influence how many leads you get, where you can pull the lever and say, okay, we need 20 more next month. Let's increase our spend. Let's ramp up our efforts there, and we'll get back what we need to ultimately get the revenue that we need on the other side. So what makes sense for us is you need to have a compelling campaign and positioning in the market. So you need to differentiate and offer unique value to your audience to be ultimately the obvious choice. Why, when a prospect is comparing you to the competition, are you the obvious choice? When you have that, everything else will get easier. Your ad campaigns will perform better, cost per customer acquisition will go down, your sales reps will have an easier time of closing sales because of your positioning in the market. So that's the key. Dial in why you're the obvious choice. Pick one channel to get that message in front of your audience. And then, of course, see how those campaigns are performing and ultimately look to make sure that you can keep that consistent. And if you dial things up or down, you'll get a predictable result. Easier said than done, I will say this. So, if you're like, oh, we don't have time for that, get in touch with us. We can refer you to the leading agency, specializes in retail lead generation, as well as multiple other great things that'll support you with regards to the things that we're going to be talking about here, or on the new business development side of things, B2B, you can also reach out to us. Okay, lead nurturing at scale. So that's number 2 of the 4 parts of the engine. What are the steps to success? Well, number 1, we'd say this is kind of non-negotiable if you're looking to grow. If you don't have a proper CRM in place where you can organize your opportunities, leverage automation, and really have a solid level of data and intelligence on the sales and marketing side of your business, then you need to get that in place. While ERPs like MoreAware, Stone Profits, Action Flow, Quote Countertop are great. If you really are serious about growth, you're going to need a proper CRM that's dedicated to sales and marketing. That's what they do, and so they have just a robust suite of tools and features that are really going to be able to power your business and grow with you. Okay, then you're going to need to have your sales processes dialed in and what we call playbooks. So how can we ensure that when we're nurturing prospects, when we're educating them about our business, when they're in the consideration phase and we're able to communicate why we're the obvious choice, how do we ensure that that's happening on a consistent basis? In order to do that, you need to document, you need to train up your team, obviously, and you need to make sure it's repeatable. Otherwise, there's going to be too much variation. Some months you'll close a good amount of quotes, other months you won't, and you won't know why, right? So you need to be able to have the oversight, the transparency that you'd gain from a CRM through the data. You need to have the processes dialed in and make sure people are following them and track that, make it measurable and track it. Okay, so number 3, sales conversion optimization. What are the steps to success there? Well, there's sort of 3 things I would encourage you to look at in that area that'll really help to impact growth or offset decline in sales that you're experiencing. First is we want to look at increasing our average deal size. So that goes beyond thinking about, okay, let's just include other products like syncs, upselling to, things that are going to increase the bottom line in the quote. Those are very straightforward. Maybe certain shops are thinking about getting into other revenue channels, generating channels. So like, okay, we're also going to include cabinets. So those are things that often are talked about. But what you should also think about is your who. Who do you serve, right? So you've got an audience that predominantly is, retail homeowners, middle class in certain geographic regions that bring in projects that average in size, when you look at all of them, of 7K. That's your average project size. You might be thinking about your who. In order to grow, you're going to want to think about okay, sorry, I should actually recap that part. So sales conversion optimization. So that's number 3. What are the steps to success? Okay, so if you're now from our last slide there, using a proper CRM, you've got your sales process in place, and you've got prospects that are moving through to the consideration phase, right? Quotes out, maybe this is a negotiation phase, and some adjustments. They're comparing you to your competitors. Okay, what are the 3 main things that I'd recommend looking at? Number 1, actually these are out of order. Number 1 would be percentage, right? You want to make sure you have the right systems and you're leveraging tools that can support your sales team. But then there's also developing their skills, their actual skill set around getting more deals across the finish line, right? Because we want to influence percentage. So in current times like this, when there might be a softening of the market, so a lower volume of overall jobs and opportunities, we're going to have overall less leads. So we really need to focus on the later stages of the customer journey and sales pipeline to ensure that we're closing as many as possible because there's simply less available, right? Or if we've seen a decline in sales, we don't have as much money to spend on advertising, let's say, because we're less profitable. So now it's like kind of a catch-22. And so we've got to focus on these things. Increasing our percentage and then increasing the average sale amount, so deal size. And that goes beyond just upselling, although that would be the most sort of obvious here at this stage. But one other thing to note, it would be around also your who. So that's outside of this stage of the pipeline, but that would be at the beginning on lead generation. That increasing the average deal size can change, not just be like, okay, well, we've decided to also sell cabinets, so that increases the average deal size. But for somebody else, that might be looking at, okay, our customers are generally middle class in this geographic region, retail, and the average deal size is 7K. We really want to grow, but there's the market conditions right now, make that, challenging. Let's look at changing the who. So we're gonna, or not changing, adding and expanding the who to custom home builders and interior designers, let's say, okay, who work on X, Y, and Z, and we can show them why we're the obvious choice and can enhance what they're doing. And their projects are, hospitality or multifamily, for example. And our average deal size is going to go to 125K. So that is something outside of sales conversion. Sorry, I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but it's an important note that average deal size isn't just having, okay, we're going to influence a homeowner to buy, material that's slightly more expensive. Choose this edge profile and include a sink. We may need to think about things outside of that to get to 10 million, 20 million, for example, right? Okay, so back on track here. Percentage, get more deals across the finish line. And when we get our pro tips, I'm going to narrow this down for you for what you should really be thinking about. So increasing our winning percentage of larger average deal size and getting more of these across the finish line. And that would be through efficiencies, but also things like looking at expediting, getting contracts signed and deposits so that ultimately, you're getting money in the bank faster. That's an area that we see a lot of our members, program members, struggling with, is that, even if it's an extra 5 days to get the contract signed and deposit, that really holds things up. And sales team members are spending time chasing things down so that it can move out of the sales pipeline and into fulfillment. And when you're using a proper CRM, you can utilize apps and tools to get electronic signatures and deposits, or looking at your sales process. For example, to have your sales reps jump on the phone as a value add just to answer any questions in the contract, get it signed, and get the deposit on the spot versus throwing out an email and just waiting for it to come back. So those are examples, steps to success of what to think about, right? It's going to be different for every shop, but what are the things I should be thinking about? Okay. Then in our fourth part of a high-performing sales engine, it's the post-sales gratitude campaigns. What are the steps to success there? You want to be thinking about, how do we surprise and delight? How do we wow a customer long after installation, long after they paid you? You want to have a dedicated department to this, even if that department is just your front desk administrator or receptionist, for example. They're one person, but they're tasked with being the department of gratitude, meaning that you're going to invest money, time, and energy as you would in the front end to get more leads and customers, to showing a lot of appreciation and goodwill towards the customers that have already entrusted you with their business and their project ultimately. So that you can, the ultimate outcome of this is so that you can get referrals by design and not by chance. So many shops rely on referrals, but they don't have a mechanism for influencing that we're going to be getting more referrals at any given time. Now, just to give a little more insight and example, our program members, for example, will map out a 90-day gratitude campaign, a 12-month gratitude campaign, for example, and those differ based on the deal size, the value. So one that's 25K, for example, that might be 12 months of touches. For one that's smaller, it might be 4K, it's a 90-day of touches. We're going to host a separate webinar specifically on gratitude campaigns. We're going to talk about the different ways in which you can show up and wow your clients, surprise, delight them, and show your appreciation to build goodwill and raving fans. So look for that. But let's keep this thing moving forward. A lot of ground to cover. Our pro tips. So ultimately, what are the fast lane strategies? You want to build this quickly, and these pro tips are going to have you in the mindset so that you can approach this and move forward as quickly as possible. First, I would say you want to focus on the biggest levers in each 4 parts of the engine that we just covered. I'll be sending out the recording for this so you can go back to it as well. You want to look for the biggest levers, and one of the ways to do that is to apply the 80-20 rule, or what's also known as the Pareto's principle, which means that 20% of all the input, money, time, and energy, is responsible for 80% of the output. And you can apply that into every area of your business: sales, operations, customer service. Quick example, if you have your lead nurturing, right? Part number 2 in the engine. What are the biggest levers? So if we want to look into, okay, where's 20% of our effort and energy of our sales team going to be that we're going to focus on in Q3 so that we can improve our lead nurturing and ultimately our sales conversion? You'd probably be looking at, commonly for a lot of shops, it's lead response time. So we're going to focus on calling our prospects when they submit a quote request or an inquiry form. We're going to respond to them in under 20 minutes. Right, that's your benchmark, and you're going to focus on that and you're going to measure that. You may identify, for looking within your business, that another key area would be just how many times we follow up, right? So if we don't get a hold of them, did we give up after the first try? Did we follow up 5 times? Okay, that's going to make up 20% of our efforts. How fast we call back, how many times we follow up when we don't hear back from somebody, and when we do get a prospect on, how many times do we nurture that prospect? What are all the touch points in order to get that deal across the finish line to closed won? And that, instead of trying to focus on everything, is what we're going to dial in on. So focus on the biggest levers of each of the 4 parts of your sales engine, and you're going to be able to move things forward a lot more quickly. So for example, if you're tackling that in Q3, that's the 20% we're going to focus on. We feel good about what the outcomes are that's produced. All right, then we can move on to another 20%. What are the biggest levers in the next area? Because you can't tackle everything at once. Shops, managers, business owners have too much oversight. There's too much to tackle. It would be unrealistic. So the 80-20 rule will be your friend. There's a great book called The 80-20 Rule. I recommend you grab that. It'll be a great resource for your business and life. All right, so my next pro tip for you is to standardize to scale. So there's a difference between growth and scale. Growth refers to an increase in the business size, revenue, or market share, while scaling refers to your ability to maintain or increase your efficiency and profitability as you grow. Because when you're trying to grow, it can put a lot of pressure on your business. So keep that in mind, and that does apply for if you've seen a decline, you're under different pressure. And so one of the best ways, because if you're in a season of winter, if you're in that struggle, and you manage to get out of it and on the other side, if you don't standardize and put the right systems in place, the next time it comes around, you're not going to be able to withstand that, or you'll have the same challenge in withstanding that, I should say. So it's very important to standardize to scale. Put in the right systems, the right processes to support the right people on a consistent and repeatable basis so that you can grow and experience less pain on your path to growth. All right. And last, as you go to, if you're reviewing some of this material and you're looking to execute this, our recommendation is a lot of this comes down to building systems and processes, and you have to think about building for average. That doesn't mean you don't want to have great A+ players on your team, but you don't want to rely on having systems that only support all-star performers to grow your business. You need to have systems and processes that are built to produce the necessary results with average players. So if you have somebody that retires, goes on maternity leave, that your business, your ability to control your sales and revenue is not impacted by a fluctuation or a change in talent. So that's a pro tip for you as you go to develop this and you think about, okay, generate our lead generation mechanism and our lead nurturing mechanism. What are the things I need to have in place that anybody can come into the business, and if they follow the systems and processes, it'll produce the necessary result so that we can go from 3 to 5 million, 5 to 8, 8 to 12, for example. So it's a really important key pro tip for you. All right, so I'm gonna end things here. I really do appreciate your time. Went down a couple of rabbit holes there. Hopefully you guys were tracking on that and you got value from that. Now I'll turn it over to you guys. Hopefully have some questions that I can answer for you, either on our topic of building a sales engine for growth or to offset a decline, or anything else related to sales, marketing, and or business development. I will end this off just by saying, because I know that sometimes people don't have time to stick around for the Q&A. Stone Fabricator Elite, that's our website. You can go and check us out. When you land there, you'll see that we do have a turnkey sales engine program where we build utilizing our proven blueprint to build you a sales engine in 90 days. So we design, build, and install that, onboarding all team members so that they're proficient in the processes, the systems, the playbooks that they need to generate more leads, nurture them at scale, be able to increase sales conversion rate, and then how do we show appreciation and gratitude in a way that doesn't strain the business? How do you do that efficiently? And so we have a turnkey program. If you're interested in that, check us out. Otherwise, let's jump into the Q&A.